How's it going, guys? My name's Jose, aka Joe Engineer, and I'm here with another quick video to show you guys how to adjust the shift coupler on a air-cooled Porsche 911 equipped with a 915 gearbox. So this would normally cover model years 1974 through 1986 and any earlier cars that have also been swapped with this newer style gearbox. And the reason why I want to cover this particular topic is that the 915 gearbox doesn't have the greatest reputation in terms of how it shifts. It's known for being very difficult to shift. Some of the root causes that be difficult to shift 915 gearbox could be simply wear and tear due to high mileage. In that case, usually first and second gears tend to be a little bit more difficult to shift into than the other gears. But in the case of a daily driven car or a frequently driven car, usually you can still get by. If the gearbox has been abused in the past, such as through power shifting, clutch dumps, burnouts, things of that nature, will also increase the wear and tear on the gearbox. Third, if there is a lot more slop in the shift linkage than there's supposed to be, such as through worn bushings in the entire shift linkage or worn bushings in the shift coupler itself. Those are another common reason why the gearbox may be difficult to shift into. So assuming you have a gearbox that is in decent health, that you can engage into all the gears normally, and assuming your bushings are in decent shape, or maybe you've just replaced them to tighten everything back up, including a new coupler so that there's very little play in here, then now everything, the shift linkage and the shift lever, are going to be in a different position than they originally were. So there is a very specific adjustment procedure that you have to do in order to make sure that your transmission will engage into all the gears with the new bushings and coupler in place. So I'm going to show you the way I do it, and hopefully that will let you try it on your car, and you should hopefully be able to get dramatically improved shifter action within a span of, let's say, 30 minutes or less. So let's get to it. So if you've never had a chance to explore the shifting mechanism in your old Porsche 911, you may be asking, what exactly is the shift coupler? And as you can see, it's nothing more than a U-joint. This end connects to the shift rod in the center tunnel, which connects to the shift lever, essentially making up the shift linkage. And this end in the back slips onto the gearbox shift rod and is secured with this set screw that has a cone shape on the end to kind of center and engage onto the shaft on the gearbox itself. And these guys wear out when the bushings go out. They're supposed to have a little bit of play in them, and as you can see, the hole is a little bit ovaled out. This one's not in terrible shape, but many times this oval will be more of a slot. Actually, this one is pretty worn out. You can tell by how much I can move it around. There's supposed to be a little bit of movement in here, but this one is pretty sloppy. So as you can imagine, this amount of slop plus all the slop in the rest of the shift linkage bushings adds up to a very imprecise shifter that gives the 915 its bad reputation. The Bentley manual has the shift coupler adjustment procedure that we will be performing. In section 340-6, shift rod coupling adjusting. In this short procedure, the two basic steps that we will be paying most attention to are these two right here. Turn the transmission selector shaft counterclockwise as facing the rear of the car. So we'll take the coupler and the shift rod in the transmission and rotate them. Rotate the right side towards the right of the car. And at the same time, with the shift lever in neutral, Pull the shift lever towards driver's seat so that shifter lever contacts the stop. This will preload the shift rod in a counterclockwise direction, arrow 2 as facing the rear of the car. Basically, the shift lever, you'll be pulling it from the center position in the 3/4 shift plane to the left towards the 1/2 shift plane in the shift housing. So step 1 of this procedure is to make sure you have your parking brake on, and make sure that the parking brake works, because you're going to temporarily disable your shifter so you can't leave it in gear, for example. So put your parking brake on. If the parking brake does not work, make sure you chock one of the wheels so that you can keep the car from rolling forwards or backward. Then over here in this center piece of floor in between the two back seats is a piece of carpet. If you lift this, there's an access panel down here that has 4 screws. Remove those 4 screws, take the panel out, and you'll see the shift coupler underneath there. So here's the shift coupler inside of the center tunnel, and you can see how it's attached to the gearbox shift rod on the backside via the set screw, and how it's clamped at the front to this tube, which is your shift linkage that goes to the shift lever via the center tunnel. For most of you, if you open this up, you'll see this round rubber accordion shaped shift boot in that position, covering up the entire coupler. If that's the case, you can zip tie it or clamp it ahead of the coupler so that you have access to it and can work with it. In my case, I leave it out completely because I have this other boot over here that is sealing the entire center tunnel from weather and the elements. So I just choose to leave it out because it's much easier to work with the coupler this way. And I don't plan on installing it back in. I'm simply leaving it out for illustrative purposes so that we have so it's easier to see and explain this whole process here. Next, if your car is equipped with a center console over the shifter, you'll want to remove that. My car doesn't have one. I've already removed it, but normally it is attached to the floor via 2 screws at the front where those round holes are, and a third screw that lives below the parking brake handle right about here in front of the heater levers. So if you remove those 3 screws, you should be able to lift the center console over the boot, over the knob, still attached to all of the audio and AC controls that may be in the middle, and gently place it over on the right side footwell over there. Then, if you do not have the console, then like I do, then all you need to do is pull off your shift knob, pull off the shifter boot, and that should expose the shifter assembly below so that we can start to dial in our shift coupler position. So now it's time to go through a coupler adjustment. Let's say you have just gone through your entire shift linkage and you have replaced the coupler and or the bushings. The shifter assembly bushings that live underneath the shifter in the tunnel, or in my case, if you've replaced your shifter or rebuilt it to get rid of any wear and slop that was there initially. If you've done any or all of those things, ideally all of these things, now you need to reset your coupler position so that it works with the new geometry of your entire linkage system. The first step of the adjustment process is to view the shift housing and lever from the side here, and make sure that the shift lever is in the 3/4 shift plane, pointing straight up, and that the lever and the top plate of the housing are at a 90-degree angle to each other when viewed from the side. Next, making sure that your shift coupler clamp nut and bolt over here are loose, and indeed they are. You want to assess how much play there is in the coupler, both front to back. In my case, they only move about a couple of millimeters. What you want to do is roughly find the center, front to back. Now you take the right side of the coupler and you rotate it with finger pressure only as far down as it'll go. In this case, you can usually hear it click. This is all the way left. This is all the way right. Next, while keeping your right hand on the shift coupler to keep the right side of the coupler pointed down, with your left hand, you want to come over here and grab the shift lever that's currently in the 3/4 shift plane and move it over to the left as far as it'll go with finger pressure only until it just touches the edge of the shift housing here. Now it's in between the 1 and 2 shift plane all the way over, and your coupler is rotated right. Now, with those two conditions being met, you want to come back and now tighten the nut and the bolt very carefully without disturbing the position of the coupler or the shift lever. I'm going to have to cut the recording here because I don't have 3 hands, unfortunately, but you should be able to do this with 2 hands and 2 13mm wrenches without disturbing the position of the shifter or the coupler. So now that you've tightened the bolt and the nut on the clamp at the front of the coupler, they should be firmly clamped onto the splined front shaft of the coupler, and they shouldn't slide around anymore. Okay, what we want to do now, run the shifter through all the gears and make sure that it engages into every gear correctly and accurately. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. Reverse lockout, preventing me from going into reverse from fifth. Back to neutral in the 3/4 plane. And reverse. Looks like we got it right the first time. In my case, because my coupler is new and has new bushings, my shifter bushings underneath the shifter assembly are new, and this is freshly rebuilt, so essentially new. Because all 3 of these items are brand new and there is very little play in the entire system, it was very easy for me to dial in the position of the shift coupler right off the bat. If any of your bushings or your shifter are worn out, you might have to try a few more times to find that sweet spot exactly where the shifter will engage all the gears correctly. And after a couple of tries, if that's the case with you, you will get the hang of it. You will find out how much more you have to rotate it this way or that way, or a little bit forward or backward, to find that sweet spot in order for you to be able to engage all the gears. In my case, looks like we're in good shape. So we're going to leave it the way it is. Now go back and retighten the bolts on the coupler. Make sure they are, give them one last little torque with your hand and make sure they're nice and tight and they won't come loose, and you should be good to go. Once you've tightened the bolt and the nut on the coupler clamp, you should be done here.
So you can grab your cover plate, close it back up, tighten down the 4 screws hand tight, flip the carpet back down. Then you can come over here to the front. You can put your rubber shift boot over the lever, seat it into place. Flip the carpet over that, back down. Then, if you have a center console, you can maneuver it back over the entire shift lever and housing, seat it into place, and put the 3 screws to secure it down. And then lastly, you can grab your shift knob and place it back over your shift lever with a new crush sleeve to hold it in place, and you should be done with this procedure.
So that's it. By now you've seen that this is a pretty short and painless way to improve the shifting in your Porsche 911 with a 915 gearbox. So hopefully if you want to extract that last little bit of shifting precision in your car, or if you've replaced all of your shifter bushings, possibly including the shift coupler, and you have to start from scratch to position the shifter where it needs to go, then this method will help you do that. So go ahead and give it a shot. Let me know if it works for you. Like and subscribe, and I hope that this helps you improve your shifting and driving experience in your car. Bye.